So let's look at this next question. A monopolist is able to maximize its profit by A, setting the price at the level that will maximize its per unit profit, B, producing output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost and charging a price along the demand curve, C, setting output at marginal revenue equals the marginal cost and setting a price at the demand curve's highest point, D, producing maximum output where price equal to marginal cost. So this is a very standard monopoly question. In terms of profit maximization, the best way to explain this is going to be by looking at the graph. So what we have here is we have the monopolist graph. So we have the typical demand curve, right, downward sloping, and then the monopolist also faces a slightly more steep marginal revenue curve. And then we can assume, I don't know, constant marginal costs maybe. And the question is, where does the monopolist produce? So in this case, the profit maximizing rule for the monopolist is marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. So that's right here. And so the quantity that they produce is set by this intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost, right? So that's Q1. But instead of charging a price equal to marginal cost, because there's a higher demand curve, what the monopolist actually is going to do is they're going to continue this quantity upward and see where it intersects the demand curve, and this is going to be the price that the monopolist charges, right? So that's going to be P1, and we can see that is higher than P star, which would have been the intersection of marginal cost and demand, where a perfectly competitive market at equilibrium would be. So P1 is going to be a little bit higher, and that's going to be, yes, inefficient, but it allows the monopolists to earn a certain level of profit, right? So it's charging P1, its marginal cost is P star, so this chunk right here is monopolist profit, right? So what we see here is that the first step is to find the intersection of marginal revenue equals to marginal cost, because that's the profit maximizing rule for monopolists, and then that you see in where monopolists would price by going to the demand curve after finding that intersection. So the best answer here, looking at the answer choices, is going to be B, right? A monopolist is able to maximize its profits by producing output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost and charging a price along the demand curve. Let's take a look at the previous tutor's answer. The previous tutor said, monopoly is a market structure in which only single seller operates and has full control over quantity supplied. There are no close substitutes for the goods sold on the market by monopolists, therefore there are barriers to market entry and exit. The profit maximizing condition for a monopolist is that a monopolist should produce where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. This equality between marginal revenue and marginal cost results in the output of the equilibrium. The monopoly sets the price along the demand curve corresponding to the equilibrium output. Hence, the correct option is B. So I don't like how the previous tutor used the word equilibrium, because that typically points to a perfect competition scenario where we're producing at this P star price rather than this P1 price. So why don't we just amend that really quickly? So the intersection of MR, marginal revenue, and marginal cost results in a profit maximizing point for monopolists, but not competitive equilibrium. Otherwise, good answer. Look up monopoly graph for a graphical cue. Yeah, so I think this is a pretty good answer on everything else considered. The best way to think about these types of questions is to simply just think about the graph and think about what's going on there. So if we have this graph, if we know this graph is what's going on for monopolies, then it's pretty easy to pick between these points for which of these points is the profit maximizing point. So we'll mark that correct, and we can move on to the next question.